Having a drink on the weekends is a normal part of college life, but sometimes drinking at Hopkins can get out of hand. With the brand new alcohol policy almost ready for implementation, it's time to discuss how we treat alcohol on this campus. I'm Emily Herman, and I'll be pouring a shot of reality tonight on Politik Focus. Joining us tonight is the new Executive President of the Student Government Association, Jack Bartlett. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So, can you tell me how the old alcohol policy was affecting students and what were the things in it that really needed to be changed?
So generally, it needed some revisions after some incidences last year. Certainly there was an incident with SAE and the Pike incident. And so in revising the sexual violence policy, we also started to take a look at the alcohol policy. And so the Dean's office decided that that needed to be updated, and they proceeded with that.
Mm-hmm. Can you walk me through that process? Who was involved? How long did it take? What were those conversations like?
So it's taken about a year. And we're just starting to roll out the new one. There was heavy student involvement in the entire process. SGA was consulted throughout the whole way. So was IFC and PANHEL, and the Student Athletic Council was also consulted. And what happened was the Dean's Office impaneled an alcohol task force, which involved a student subcommittee to look at the existing policies and what needed to be done. Now in the interim, they set up some policies that were suggested by consultants from national fraternities and other groups, just administrators as an interim measure, but they've now looked at the entire policies, and they'll be codifying a lot of those interim measures as actual policy soon. But all the student groups were able to provide recommendations. The feedback went straight to the president of the university, the deans, the vice provost for student affairs, Kevin Schullenberger. They digested that feedback. They certainly utilized it, and now they're ready to actually release the policy.
Mm-hmm. So I know there's a few things that are still under wraps, but what can you tell us at this point?
So generally, I can't walk through any of the specific provisions. I was briefed on it this morning by the Dean of Student Life, Tara Martinez. What I can tell you is, again, it does codify a lot of the interim measures, so nothing in it will be a real shock to anybody. It's a lot of what fraternities and other groups are already doing, registering parties, etc. It also makes clearer potential repercussions for breaking the policy, which was something that we had asked for. Again, nothing's like set in stone. There's a lot of flexibility in the policy, so that it's not, there's some discretion. But generally, it allows students to know what to expect when they break the policy. And then I can also tell you that we're quite proud to have secured an amnesty provision. That's something that I know a lot of senators were pushing for, particularly the sophomore class president, Anna Dew, and other members of the sophomore class. I know that our Health and Safety Subcommittee for the Senate was pushing for that. And what that does is, if somebody is intoxicated and they call for help, or even if a fraternity or another group, I'm going to use a fraternity as an example, if the fraternity calls for help, calls HERO, they're not in trouble based on the alcohol violation. So if I'm in a fraternity and I call to help somebody else out, I won't get in trouble, and neither will the student that I'm helping. So it's almost like a good Samaritan. Now, certainly there are limits to it, but that's generally the principle behind it.
Mm-hmm. So there's been a spike in the number of violations that are reported. It was in Hopkins Safety and Security's annual report. Do you think this has to do with some of the new changes that have been instituted, or could there be other factors at play here?
Definitely. I mean, look, there's definitely a focus on this, and that's caused the administration to turn some attention to it, based, again, on past incidences. So it's no surprise that they're starting to actually really take a look at how students are operating socially, and I think that's led to some violations. At the same time, we've kind of actually gotten policies on the books. So people were violating things in the past without a clear expectation or clear understanding of their responsibilities. Whereas now I think we're clarifying what groups have to do, what students have to do, and if you're violating the policy, it really is because you're not doing what you already know you're supposed to do, rather than it's an arbitrary, you don't have a clear understanding, and then you get hit with disciplinary action.
All right. On a little bit of a different note, although maybe not as widespread as alcohol, there's also student drug use, which is against a lot of school policies. Has there been any thought into how the school is going to change those policies, especially with marijuana, now that the laws in the state have changed as well?
So I will say that as an aside, the federal laws haven't changed,
Okay.
so there's still a federal prohibition on marijuana. But the school is looking at drug policy generally. I'm not sure it's the impetus is from the change in laws, and I'm not sure that it's trying to relax drug policy or make it stronger. We're certainly looking at it. I know that part of the alcohol policy does touch on drugs. That's not the root of the policy. It's not like the main part of it, but there are certain provisions that touch upon drugs.
All right. And also, just on the general topic of mental health, I know you came into your role after your predecessor said he needed to deal with his own mental health. So with alcohol, do you think a lot of students are self-medicating to deal with their problems in that unhealthy way with binge drinking? Or what are the greater issues with the binge drinking culture on this campus?
Definitely, yeah. No, I think that binge drinking is a symptom of a larger problem that you touched upon, which is mental health, stress. Certainly at an institution like ours, there's a lot of it. So we actually had a reception with a bunch of the university's vice presidents and vice provosts on Tuesday, the whole Senate. And then we got dinner with President Daniels, Provost Lieberman, Vice Provost Kevin Schellenberger, Dean Martinez, Dean Wilson, and we talked about these issues. And what SGA, and in particular Jason, who I think is incredibly courageous for bringing this issue to light in the way that he has, and very graceful in the entire process. What we brought to them was, we said this: look, there is a big issue on campus. We are ringing some alarm bells with you, and we want you to take a look at it in a holistic approach. So in the past, orientation and all the school's programs are focused on not binge drinking, and we want them to dig deeper. Why is binge drinking occurring? It's a symptom of this larger issue. And so we want them to look at tuition, we want them to look at academics, we want them to look at scheduling, we want them to look all across the board at what contributes to stress for students on this campus. And then once we attack the root cause of the problem, that will reduce binge drinking, it will reduce mental breakdowns, and it will cure a lot of these symptoms that we see. And I think drinking is a huge component of that.
Do you have any ideas as far as looking forward into the future of alcohol policy that haven't yet been implemented, or just things like different initiatives that you think as an SGA you'd like to accomplish?
Yeah, I mean, certainly this is a big overhaul that we've just been involved in. So, obviously policies will need to be tweaked. For example, this policy, and I'm not supposed to go too far into it, but it sets certain numbers at how many people constitutes a party, and and what your second violation, what that could entail. I think these are all things that might need to be tweaked. We'll certainly be in very close communication with the vice provost and the dean on what needs to be tweaked as this is rolled out. And in a broader sense, I think that this policy is really focused on addressing. I mean, it applies all across the board, but it's more focused on addressing off-campus parties. I think that I know that we are looking into strengthening our understanding of policies governing residential life. So that's also an area that we'll be heavily involved in.
Has SGA always been this involved in updating policies like this?
I wish. Look, I'll say that I think this year we've made a concerted effort to move away from programming. So we've been engaging other groups across campus, and they've been engaging us, which is great to see. For example, Hopkins recently came to us and said, we want to put on this We the Kings concert, we need some extra money. We were happy to help them so that we can then focus on true policy work. We just restructured under something called the CLEAR Act, which I've sponsored and introduced, and it changed the internal dynamics of the Senate. So it created legislative committees. There are now 8, and they address policy areas rather than broad sweeping areas of like one of the old committees was safety, sustainability, and development. Well, what does that encompass? Pretty much everything. And what we've done is split it up. So now there's a health and safety committee, which is working on sexual violence and working on alcohol policy and to some degree some Greek life policies. And then there's a committee on sustainability and development, which is working on getting a campus center or a student center, making the whole campus a little bit more sustainable and environmentally friendly. And those are more policy based rather than saying this broad thing. Development used to mean a bunch of different things. It meant massage chairs and levering, and these are all great things, and we're continuing to work on them. But by splitting up the committees, we enable other committees to focus on true policy work. So I know that was a long answer. Short answer is yes, I think that this is a different change than you've seen in the past, and we've always said we're trying to be a different SGA than the school has seen.
So you were sworn in today, so I know you don't have so much experience under your belt as president. But in summary, what do you hope will change under your term as far as alcohol use and alcohol policy?
I honestly just want the school to be safer. I think that is the core and paramount goal of SGA is to make sure that we set up a community that is safe for all students. And so that's again why I focused so heavily on sexual violence policy since I took office, and why I've focused on alcohol policy, among other policies that also I'm trying to get more campus safety officers in the streets. I'm trying to, I'm working with campus safety to do a whole host of things. I'm working with the legal counsel to make sure that we're in compliance with federal and state laws in regards to student safety. But if anything, I hope that this alcohol policy keeps students safer, and I think that the amnesty provision is a huge step in that direction. I've talked with a lot of our COFI schools, which is kind of it's a consortium on financing higher education.
Mm-hmm.
It's a bunch of like-minded schools in similar size and prestige, and most of them have this policy, this amnesty policy. So I think it's important that we move in line with that entire trend in education to make, drinking is always going to be a bit taboo, but to realize it's just a part of life at college, and to then work on how to make it safer rather than how to catch students doing it.
All right, this has been a really interesting conversation. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching this episode of Politik Focus. See you next time.